Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. We're going traveling and it's a far trip we're going today. Coming out west all the way, well, you meet our guest, Alma. Alma, you've got a couple of last names, and what are they?
Well, my maiden name was Griffin. My married name is Fairfield.
And how did your family happen to come out west?
Well, on my dad's side of the Griffin, and of course the race back in those days heading west, they left Illinois in 1848 or 49 and came to the Willamette Valley, and then they heard about the gold rush, I guess, down in California. As they came down, and when they landed in Jackson County, they liked it so well they decided to stay there, so they took up donation land claims. And Griffin Creek from up there is named for my great-grandfather. And then they settled there in 1852, and my grandmother's maiden name was Hamlin, and they settled in Jackson County in 1852, and I think she was only 16 years old when she and Grandpa were married.
Oh my goodness.
And they crossed the plains, left her family, they left Iowa in April and got to Jackson County in October, and she rode her pony across the plains. And when they got over in the Tule Lake country, she lost her shoes. She had to come the rest of the way with her barefooted. And the Indians stole her pony around Goose Lake over there. They kept wanting her pony, and her father wouldn't sell the pony to him, so they stole it. And
so she had no pony and no shoes.
Yeah.
What did she do?
we just made the best of it.
Leather feet?
Yeah, anyhow, they took up a donation land claim, which is practically all of the north part of Phoenix and south part of Medford now, and then
Now,
the Hamlins and then the Griffins. Their donation land claims up there joined each other, I think. I mean, so Griffin Creek is named for my great-grandparents on the Griffin side.
Okay, which one of these is Griffin and which is Hamlin?
No, that's the Everton side.
Well, now, how did they come into the picture?
Well, the Evertons came from Nebraska in 1887, right after the railroad first came to Grants Pass. And they came in here, and then Grandpa bought a place which is now part off of Quail Lane down there off of the Ferry Road. And he put in a big peach orchard down there and also a small sawmill. And then Mother had 5 brothers. 4 of them were railroad people. And Percy Everton was the only one that didn't follow the railroad trade. But he worked at the post office till he retired later. Now this is my grandmother Griffin, when she was Hamlin. Her maiden name was Hamlin. She lived to be 90 years old, and she survived the survival of the fittest. But Grandpa, this picture, this one here is a picture of her house, and 2 of Dad's sisters are here, and this is my dad on the porch, and this is 2 of his brothers here. And Grandpa, that house burned, and Grandpa died of a heart attack while the house was burning. They carried him out away from the house a ways. And so then Grandma, they rebuilt, and then I don't know how many years later that house burned, and so then she moved to town and spent the rest of her years with her daughter Lydia Wirtz, married J.G. Wirtz. He was a carpenter.
Now, this house was on a road named for your family?
No, it wasn't named at that time. The main road went up not very far in front, but they were about halfway between Wilderville and down the river towards Gillese, and people used to stop there for overnight, a lot of times from Wilderville down.
Oh, because they had rooms for rent, or?
Oh, yeah, people would just stay overnight. My aunts like to cook, and so. But another interesting thing there, they always had sourdough biscuits, hot sourdough biscuits. We'd cook them every day. And when Mother and Dad were married, Mother said, no, she wasn't going to bake them 3 times. She'd bake them for breakfast. So I was raised on hot sourdough biscuits for breakfast.
Oh, do you still make them?
No. I don't make anything anymore now.
You don't.
But so I don't cook anything, but
Now,
anyhow.
So you have roots in Jackson County and Josephine County?
Yeah. And in later years, Mother and Dad, when they were married, they lived in a house up on the hill back of where this house was taken, we lived. And then he sold that and bought the 80 acres down between where Robertson Bridge Road goes down now and the west side of Griffin Park. And that Griffin Park was held as a power site for years, and then I don't know what kind of a deal they made somewhere there. The county got a hold of it, developed it into a park.
Oh, it's a wonderful park. I've gone to sunrise services there, the little church puts on it. It's a wonderful park on the road. There's so many parks to stop by, and I went there yesterday after I'd met you.
Well, my dad would have been so pleased to see that develop, and in that area, now he was a pioneer in a lot of things. He got the ferry boat in there because they used to have to ford the river to get across there or go down and to where Robertson Bridge is now. There was a ferry or across places. But he and my grandfather Everton and one another man, I didn't get that, but I got a copy of a contract they signed with Elisha Frankham that he took over the ferry and operated it on for so much a passenger they had to pay to get across the ferry. And that ferry was in existence then until Robertson Bridge went in. And then my dad also got Sand Creek School started, and he got the first mail service and the first telephone service in that area.
Oh my. Now, that ferry road, that was the way people crossed the Rogue River. I understand the ferry'd even take the school kids across.
Well, 1 year before that was operating, my sisters went to school over there where it was the Mapleton School, which is the ferry school over there on Ferry Road now. But they used to cross the ferry in a rowboat and go to school over there.
Oh my.
And this Billy Frankham was the son of the Elisha Frankham that run the ferry, and he was retarded. And he knew how to operate that ferry. My mother also said she had safer crossing the river with Billy Frankham than anybody else during high water, that he knew how to handle a rowboat, he knew how to handle that ferry boat. But he was the joke of the neighborhood. The people used to kid him a lot, but he'd always laugh about it and go on. He was quite the character of the area down there.
You've brought a friend along with you. Why don't you introduce us to the lady next to you?
Well, this is my friend Matt. Kim Bowers, yeah. I say a good friend here that they help look after me. And she clerks there at Fred Meyer's, so a lot of people see her every day. She sees a lot of people every day that she works, but she was so good to offer to bring me in yesterday to the cemetery.
And that's just where I met you. I was visiting my family graves, our daughters, my parents, Doug's mother's just recently. This was the first year that she passed away. And they walked up and said, "Would you like some flowers?" Well, I'd already used up all the flowers I brought, but here were hundreds of these, right?
Well, my good friend Kristen Boyce brought those down to me from her field, and so I put them along with flowers from mine with some fern and red roses. First went to my husband's grave, which is right across the road from the mausoleum, and then we went up to the top, and on the south slope is my mother and dad and my brother Merle. A lot of people know Merle. He was assessor here for several years. And then on the north slope was my other brother and his wife. So
Now, are those fellas here in these pictures?
yes, this is my older brother Merle, and this is between Dale. He was between me. I was the youngest of 5. This is my oldest sister, Audrey, and she married a Conrad, and she was a bookkeeper. And I just donated a picture to the Historical Society the other day of the Gray and Harbeck City Market down there on 5th and G Street. She was a bookkeeper for them, and I gave the Historical Society a picture of her and Charlie, I think his name was Gray, and Emil, I forgot what, Emil Harbeck. And then there was a picture of another fellow, like Barber, or I've forgotten what his name was, but she was a bookkeeper all her life. She finished, back in those days, they had to put a business course in for the high school instead of 4-year course. So she took a 2-year course, business, and graduated, and then she was a bookkeeper the rest of her. Worked as a bookkeeper for the Grants Pass Irrigation District for a number of years too. And Merle went to work for the D.O. Hayes when he was assessor, and then he went, and then when he went, James McFadden was assessor, and my brother worked under him. And then when McFadden quit, then my brother was elected assessor.
Well, great. So he'd learned the trade by then.
Yeah. And
now, is this a picture that you recognize?
Well, that's the old depot.
Yeah, yep. Did you see horses and buggies and carriages and things here around Southern Oregon when you grew up?
Well, I was a little too young to remember that. I can barely remember our old Model T Ford in there, but...
Well, were there still hay-in wagons and things like that?
My dad used to be road supervisor down there in that area too, and he drove a team and took an old Fresno, they called it, and go down there where the Griffin Park is, haul gravel from that bar down there and keep up the roads in that area. And
well, what about hop picking?
I picked a lot of hops, and I trained hops and worked for Fred Robertson. And that's another picture that I donated to the Historical Society the other day, is a picture of a hop yard, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's when the hops grew up the poles instead of along the wires. And they had a bunch, and they grew up the poles, and I've got a lot of people in there I recognized and wrote the names on the back, and that's down there with the Historical Society now. I just turned it in the other day.
You're doing the very thing that I encourage people to do all the time, is record who's in your picture, because I wouldn't know. Who do you have here?
Well, that's my man here. Right in front is my grandfather and my grandmother, and Uncle Percy's boy is sitting on Grandma's lap, and the fellow with the beard is Grandpa's brother, Fred Everton. And his folks came from England and settled in New York, and Grandpa was born in Utica, New York. And then later they moved to Minnesota, and Grandma was from Kentucky, and she had to get permission to cross the lines during the Civil War. And my uncle used to say, well, my mother was a Southerner and my dad was a Northerner. I'm straddling the Mason-Dixon line.
And they came west too.
And then in 1887 they came west out here, and well, I don't know whether this uncle or another brother, they came out, and I had I've got them, a lot of letters that their cousin wrote telling about this country out here and how the watermelons grew so fast they pulled the vines out of the ground, trying to keep up with them.
Oh, did someone told me there were strawberries this big, and I said, I don't think so, but I'll listen to your story. They pulled the vines right out of...
he was quite a joker. But anyhow, this was before I was born, because I was born in December of 13, and this was taken in 1st of January of 1913, so.
That's the family.
Yeah, that was my mother's family, and she's the one that's standing right. This is my mother right back there, and there's my sister standing right alongside of her.
Uh-huh. Now, did they pick hops, or?
Oh, back to the hop yard. I worked over there, and we trained hops for Fred Robertson. And we had to go along and take a big knife and cut off all of the extra vines that were coming up, pick out about 3 of the best vines and cut all the rest of them, and start them twirling up the strings, the twines. And then later we'd have to go back through and keep them in order. And then later somebody went through with the horse and bug team sled and turned them on, and they got to the top turn them so that they crossed the vines, the tall vines up there. But that was a job, I'll tell you, up and down from. And we worked for, I think it was $1.60 a day. I got $1. Oh, I think we worked 5 days or 6 days for $9.60 a week.
Well, what did you do with all that money?
Bought school clothes.
Oh, you...
And then picking hops. We got that basket there, looks very familiar, because we picked those hops, and we'd sometimes get out early in the morning while the dew was on, so they'd weigh a little bit heavier. But a basket like that would be good if it weighed 100, or I've forgotten, 550 or 60 pounds. Anyhow, if we got 100 pounds a day, we were lucky. We took a good picker, and some of them fudged a little, pick them as dirty as they could, so they'd weigh up a little bit more. Well, we picked them for $0.01 a pound, and we got $0.0125 a pound if we stayed through the hop picking season and didn't cash in our checks beforehand. But I picked a lot of hops. And
now, the Ransow place, did you ever pick down at what became Christie's?
No, I picked it. My dad worked at Christie's one time, and I think I picked hops there one year, but most of mine was down there for Fred Robertson.
Oh.
My dad worked as a lineman, going around. Somebody said, line down, go around and let the line down so they could reach the hops better.
Oh.
And then fill them up. And when they get you a big sack full, then they'd come around and weigh a sack of hops and give you a ticket for what it weighed.
Oh, I can just see them with that on their backs, those great big, they weren't sacks, they were kind of like burlap.
Yeah, big burlap sacks. And if you got it real full, I probably weigh 100 pounds, but you had to really have a good sack full of.
Now, where's this house? It's a beauty.
That's on Griffin Road. There, Dad owned a property there, so the road, Griffin Road, from when they went ahead and improved that road from, which is now Robertson Bridge Road. They named the road Griffin Road from there down to the ferry landing, or Griffin Park. And that house was there. It was built in 1918 from the lumber that he got from the old courthouse when they tore the courthouse down. And the front door on that house, it's standing now, but the front door is from the old courthouse. And the windows that we used to have in there came out, but they were 2 windows, but they didn't have any way of sliding up and down and moving. So the people that have, I don't know what year it was, they put in new windows out there on it.
I went there yesterday and took a picture because it has a sign on the front that gives your family credit for the home. But the date is, you said your family had owned it for a lot longer than that.
The house was built in about 1918, and that's the date they've got on the plaque. But Dad bought the place in 1908, and it was so brushy and all, he bought Angora goats to clean the brush out and everything. He cleared it out. And his field, where he raised everything, was down along the river.
Oh, sure.
and river bottom land, and the fruit orchard and everything was down there, and he didn't have to use any irrigation down there on that, but he always planned a big garden and there, and then he usually cut about 3 crops of hay each year, alfalfa hay, and I used to go down there when I was small, and my brothers would go down there and help. One brother they'd pitch hay on from each side, and the other one would load it, scattered around evenly on the wagon, and I'd get up there and help tromp it down.
Oh, I bet you're a good tromper.
Yeah, I liked that, and the horses. And then when I wasn't very big, when hauled the hay up to put it in the barn, I rode the saddle horse to pull the fork out, and then I'd go to the back of the barn with the team and hook it onto the cable and pull the hay up into the barn.
Clear up
into the hay mow from the back of the barn and pull it up.
Did you get to
go
jump?
Along a track and into the barn, and when my brothers up there, when they'd get to the place, they'd trip it, and down would come that load of hay, and then they placed it around up in the hay mow where it should be.
And did you get to jump in it
Oh,
ever?
yes. Oh, yeah, we used to go up there and dig tunnels in it, play in the hay mow.
Now, do you get to hear these stories often?
Oh, yes, I've heard. Yeah,
While you're
Alma's-
taxiing around,
Oh, yes.
you know, there's a movie about driving Miss Daisy, and I think your stories are just wonderful.
I say up at the schoolhouse, of course, at the school we had 2 front doors open up front, and one side was the boys and the other the girls. And we were in there, and then of course the oh, no, I can't say the name of them. Outhouses, anyhow.
Yeah.
There was 2 of those out in the yard, and there was a pump there, a well, and the teacher used to come down. In the corner of the schoolhouse was a big stove with a big protecting thing around it anyhow.
Okay.
And there the teacher had to get there and have a fire going, and that schoolhouse was used for activities for the neighborhood.
The whole community get together.
Yeah, the Christmas programs, and well, it even was used for church services.
Oh, okay.
And there in the schoolhouse, and of course you used the old kerosene lamps.
Oh, you remember it well.
It wasn't electricity didn't come to that area until in the 1930s, and the electricity came down Canal Road and down across right there about where the park is, and it came up there, and then it went right out across Dad's place down to what they call the Flanagan Mine.
You know, yesterday we went to watch the boat race, boatneck down there.
Oh, yeah.
Just because of you. I'd heard the story. I went lots of places because of you, and I took some pictures, and you know, I'm trying to make a daisy chain, and I'm not doing real well. Did you make daisy chains?
Oh, no.
And I guess you could wear them like a necklace?
Yeah. Oh, there's lots of things that I remember my childhood days of what we did down there and that.
And Jeanette Stark has recorded some of these on radio, but I understand this is the first time on television, right?
Yeah. Well, she was starting in to get me on my personal, everything that I had with her was mostly about the background of the town and things that I remembered.
What about this? Do you know
yeah. I remember that.
I just heard that the park, you could wear a swimming suit if you were going to swim, but you could not cross the road beyond the bandstand and the bathhouse if you had a swimming suit on. It was forbidden.
That's right. The bathhouse was built along the slope of the hill and went down to the river edge there, and there were 2 rafts out there. One was over halfway across, and that's where the deeper water, more experienced swimmers had to go out there. And then the other raft was closer, and then there was also a slide there that people go down in the slide.
Oh, yeah.
But the bathhouse, anybody that in a bathing suit was not allowed to cross the road right back of the bathhouse.
Now,
to
was your
go in any other part of the park?
Was your swimming suit quite immodest?
No, they were all like some of the women's. They had the skirts on, kind of on top of the skirts, and fully covered up above.
And you couldn't get past. What do you think of her story?
I'm amazed. It's like, oh, wow.
Oh, what a gift you're giving to the community by sharing your stories.
And then, of course, over another part there where the bandstand was, we used to go down there every Friday night and listen to the city band concert, wander around through the park. We weren't afraid to be out on the streets after dark back in those days. We'd come home after the concert was over, and it's such a good time. I've got some programs that were put on by the band concert down there, and the names of the people that played.
Oh, I can remember the military band coming, because my early memories are World War II. I'm so sorry we're out of time, but what you've given to us is just wonderful today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your stories.
I said I went through the first grade in Shan Creek, coming into town, third grade, and went through in my class and graduated in 1931 from Grants Pass High School.
And she gets together with the reunion class, the depression class, right? Mm-hmm. Thanks for tuning in. It's been powerfully full today, and I thank you for being my guest. Thanks for bringing her.
Sure.
Bye. I'm Bernie Martin Beck saying bye for now.